Oh, 20, oh, sorry, 23. 23.
I'm happy to move it, Madam Chair.
Goodness gracious me.
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Been moved and seconded. Sorry, I know, it's in here. Any questions? Sue, do you want to?
Madam Chair, if I may make some comments with respect to, I'll take the report as read. Essentially, this is in response to the resolution that Councillor Brewer referred to earlier in this discussion, particularly with respect to ICT. What I'd like to just do, though, is set a little bit of context, but also I'd like to note that I'm not here to talk about any decisions that were made in the past. Clearly I can't, because I was not in the role. What I would like to do is to set the context before I address moving forward. One or two of the points I'd like to make, just to make sure we are all on the same page. Our total ICT spend since amalgamation is $902 million, and that includes $330 million of capital expenditure. So we can all do a little maths, just under $600 million on operating expense. Now that is well within the approved 2012 LTP budget of $500 million. The other points I'd just like to put into context, our current budget for the current year is $132 million on operating expense and $77 million in capital expense. It's important to note that our operating expenses include telecommunication costs across council, so that's fixed lines, mobiles across council and the CCOs other than AT and Watercare. Also, approximately 1/3 of our operating expense is accounted for in depreciation, and that is growing by approximately 3.7% per annum as we move, like our other assets, to fully funding depreciation by 2024-2025. We've reduced our spend on repairs and maintenance in IT from $3.9 million in 2012 to $270,000 in the current year. That is as a result of moving from 12 legacy data storage infrastructure services to one, and outsourcing that to Spark in 2013-2014. And you are also aware that we've renegotiated our contract with SAP in December 2015, and will save $33 million as a result over the next 10 years. I'd also ask that you note that our ICT budgets include the budget for Nucor. That is $6 million in OPEX, my apologies, and $151 million in capital expenditure over the life of the project. That Nucor project is progressing to the delivery parameters that you approved through the project reset in November of 2014. Several of those functions will go live in June 2016 across the former Rodney, North Shore and Waitakere areas. Rating will go live in July of 2016, following the rates being struck as part of the 2016-17 annual plan process. Consenting and property information functions will follow in Nucor from October of 2016. Nucor is tracking to the revised budget and is expected to deliver benefits of up $58 million by 2022. Mike, could I get you to put attachment A up on the screen, please? It is in your papers, councillors, but it is a little difficult to actually read. Let's pause for a moment while Mike does that. Thank you, Mike. Attachment A depicts the extremely complicated IT environment the council inherited at amalgamation. That is the box on the left-hand side of that page, well, boxes plural, my apologies. The reality of that, what sits behind that very complicated-looking state of the world, is 5,000 legacy systems in varying conditions, differing functionality, relevant and cost to maintain. Since then, we've integrated many of those into Council's operating environment as we work hard to implement Nucor so that we can decommission a number of the legacy systems that we inherited across finance, procurement, property management, rates, consents and customer relationship management. A further reason to negotiate the SAP contract last December was to ensure that we can optimise the SAP footprint that's shown in the box on the right-hand side of the page. That is where we move to. Alongside the work that we are continuing to do on the alternate sources of financing work and recognising EY's role as our independent quality assurance partner to the Nucor project, I have worked with them to look at how we could better optimise our ICT strategy and act on the resolution you passed last November. You'll note in the paper before you for noting, we believe we can deliver a consequential saving in the range of $37 million represented by approximately $12 million in operating expense, $25 million in capital expense, with ongoing savings of around $10.8 million per annum. That will be achieved by 3 key areas of focus and 5 work streams. Mike, could you please bring up the next slide? The 3 key areas of focus are prioritising the number of IT projects we have underway, stopping underperforming, and the definition of that for this context is over budget or behind schedule.
Two.
Yes?
Slow down a bit.
Sorry, Mr Mayor. On non-essential projects. We expect that will realise a saving of up to $34 million. We also need to assess the functions that could be better performed by third parties. We estimate that savings of approximately $2 million could be achieved through increased efficiencies and reductions in staff numbers as a result. I would note that that is the starting point of that work. We also would disestablish non-critical IT staff functions, and that would be expected to realise a further estimated $1 million in savings. You see before you on the screen and in your papers the 5 work streams that comprise the 3 key focus areas. The point that I would ask that you note with this, and I do apologise for the fact that you received the report yesterday, the reason for that was that we were still in the process of briefing staff who would be impacted by this work. They have now all been briefed. We will commence workshops next week to develop these work programs and to confirm the timelines. And it's our intention to complete as much of the work as possible by the 30th of September this year. So it's quite a short, sharp, tight program. I would emphasise that this work does not impact Nucor. We will not be making any changes that impact the June 2016 go live. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Very clear. Questions, comments? Councillor Casey.
Two questions. So just at your last statement there, disestablish non-critical IT functions. What does that mean?
Roles in IT functions. So there are roles within the IT team that are business partner roles where they do work with other areas. So if we're stopping projects that we don't need to be doing, we may not need some of the people associated. Simple terms, Councillor Casey.
And what's the time frame for that?
Within the same period of time, by 30th of September.
My other one is really, it's a follow-on from the last discussion. It's about water care and Auckland transport. I'm looking at the slide before that about water billing, for example, at water care. Are we saying, even though you say in the report, our group approach must be more aligned, which is basically the same discussion we've just had, and is the aim in the end for everybody, all the CCOs, to be on the same system?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that is the ideal world. Now, we do have the majority of CCOs, other than AT and Watercare, are all on the SAP platform that we use. AT has mainly an SAP platform, and the contract renegotiation in December covered council and AT. We have a second phase of that work now beginning, where we will work with Watercare as well. There are some matters that Watercare need to address in their own environment. If they can join our work as they do that, we will. But that is the optimal world that we work to, is the core SAP footprint.
So considering the amount of ratepayers' money that we're spending on this, is there any way to make water care come into line? It's exactly the same question I asked before. It doesn't make any sense that they're out there and they can stay out there if that's what their board want. It's like, who's controlling the council-controlled organisations? Their board is controlling them, or the council?
At the risk of getting into the discussion we just had, it is the very same answer, that they do have their own board.
Thank you. Councillor Hulse.
Madam Chair, I'm interested in this, and I think this report is really, really useful because it actually starts to put in place a more rational and considered approach to every time we talk about IT. The amounts are eye-watering, and the amount of hyperbole out there in the media and social media is excruciating. It's hard to actually reduce it down to the realities. So we've spent an eye-watering amount of money, but we've actually got some stuff out of it. And it's the stuff that we've got I rest my case. So how do we get across to people the reality of this? There's a huge degree of cynicism, as witnessed on my right, and there's a huge degree of misinformation out there in the media. How do we actually reduce this down to, this is what we've spent? We acknowledge the trials and tribulations of this complex process. I don't think anyone needs to make excuses. It simply is what it is. But we have bought, and the resulting project is at this stage. No one's going to read this whole thing. How do we put it in those terms? The second part of my question is a far more personal one to our ELT. This has been a very challenging process for our staff. I'm aware that in workplace terms, the IT industry is one of the toughest and often the most stressful. I'm aware that politically we haven't covered ourselves in glory with the way that we've treated this process. And I'm also aware my own family has suffered a suicide of someone connected with a stressful industry in the last 3 months. I want us to look really, really closely at the impact on warm, breathing, living human beings as part of this. And I want us to think about how we actually step forward in this. So I think to our Chief Executive and our ELT and Sue, first of all, I want to say thank you for wrangling this into an understandable space. Secondly, I think we need to reduce this down to what have we spent, what have we bought, and what have we got that's understandable. And thirdly, to us as elected members, at some stage we need to step across that gulf of disbelief and horror and hyperbole and into a space where we move on and actually start to engage sensibly with this.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes, because it has been quite difficult, and I mean we've talked about leaking around this table, but unfortunately the day after the workshop, which is confidential, well, the day of the workshop, Ms Tyndall was getting questioned by the Herald about this whole thing. So, it doesn't look good on any of us.
Let's be consistent.
All of us that were there.
Sorry about that.
Should have a code of conduct then.
There was
Is that mea culpa?
We do have
That you?
one. We do have a
Yeah,
code
right.
of conduct.
Yeah, right, you can imagine. Anyway, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah. Look, I really want to follow in behind Penny. There are 2 points here. Firstly, this is the area of council's business that councillors struggle with most. And I put my hand up and say, I am not an IT expert. I am miles away from it. And we tend to be very hands-on, i.e. Kath, about how we manage the business of council going forward and what's going on in the community. We like to really know and understand it, and this one we do not. And we are really dependent on the advisors that we get, and in particular those under Stephen's tutelage and supervision who have the responsibility for delivering. So that's the first thing, and that's difficult for us. Just about anything else we can politically manage because we know and understand it fairly intently. Second issue is this. 2009, campaign in full flight, and the one thing that everyone agreed on was that this was going to be the biggest challenge in uniting the city. Aside from the issues of community and all of that sort of stuff, that IT was it because we knew how many platforms there were. And between Banks, me, Andrew, whoever it was who was up on the platform, and some of you are out in the hustings, no one knew exactly what this cost was going to be. The very best assessment we had was 200 mil.
That's right.
So you have given a very cogent summary, the headline facts of what we have spent. And as we head into the next round of democracy in full flower, the headline facts on this issue absolutely need to be out there, because they're not great, they are big, but they were always going to be big. 5,000 separate platforms into one. I mean, this is a massive, massive job, and of course out there are 10 million people involved in the IT sector, each of whom has their own idea that they're doing absolutely the right thing, and all the others don't know nothing. And man, oh man, do they get into everyone's ear about it. So, I think what is very useful in this, aside from a descriptor as to how we're going forward in some of the real challenges around staffing, and I thank you, Pen, because there will be people who will not survive this in terms of their employment. But just those headlines, Sue, we absolutely need to get those headlines out there. We just talk about those key figures, costs to date, employment, blah, blah. And if we get those out there, then we'll be doing everyone a reasonable favour, and also it'll give us a benchmark to move forward on. So, good report and a really good base.